In the first part of this course, you've learned from Hamel how to run automations with Weights and Biases model registry and webhooks. In this lesson, we will focus on a different way of running our automations using Weights and Biases launch. And let's first take a look how this is done. We'll use the simplest possible setup with a Docker queue and a simple Docker image that will run our evaluation script. But you will also learn in a future lesson more about launch, which is a very powerful concept of running jobs on a Kubernetes cluster or distributed compute that you have access to. It has a lot of value beyond simple automations. So let's again start with a very simple use case. First, we'll start with creating a Docker image that will run our evaluation script. So let's take a look at this Docker file. It's going to be a super simple Python environment. We'll install our requirements for evaluation, and then it will trigger the eval.py script that we have just reviewed. So let's copy this command and let's create our Docker image. Okay, now that the image is built, we can take this image and create a Weights and Biases launch job. And you will see how a job in Weights and Biases is essentially a template that you can trigger through Weights and Biases and use it to run experiments, to run evaluations, and do many different things that essentially everything that you can do with Python, you can probably do with a Weights and Biases job. So we'll use this command. We'll use Weights and Biases CLI to create a job. You can also create a job whenever you kick off a Weights and Biases run and log the code along with that run. You can then replicate it using Weights and Biases launch. So let's create a job using Weights and Biases CLI. And you can see this is creating a launch job of type image. This is creating a Docker image job. And it created this job in our project. So let's go to this project and take a look at the job that we just created. You can see we are in a Weights and Biases project. We have a list of jobs here. And this is our evaluation job. You can see we just created it. It doesn't have any runs. If we click on it, we can expand. And yeah, we can launch this job. But to launch a job, we need some compute that the job can run. And this is the concept of a launch queue. So if we go back to the instructions, we now need to proceed to create a launch queue. And again, this can run in any type of environment. In this case, we'll keep it simple, and I'll just create a queue that runs on my MacBook. And we'll be able to trigger jobs from Weights and Biases server to run on my local computer. So to do this, we'll go to launch, and we'll create a new Docker queue in our entity. In this case, we're working on this ReviewCo entity, but in your case, you may want to work in your team or in your personal entity. So let's go back to ReviewCo. Let's go to launch and create a new queue. So again, this will be running in this entity. Let's call this queue evaluate. We'll use a Docker container here. And one thing that we may want to set up, and again you will see this in the README, is we will need to have access to this OpenAI API key variable in our environment that runs evaluation job, because it will need it to call GPT-4 API. So let's pass this environment variable here in this setup. Make sure that it actually Weights and Biases picks it up from the local environment. So just gonna put this here. And let's create the queue. Okay, so now we have a queue, but this queue is not running because it doesn't have any active agents. So there is no compute that is pulling jobs from this queue and listening. So I think it's a good time to add an agent. And we get this command here, 1db launch agent, this entity with this queue. So let's copy this. Let's go back to our terminal and I think we can just put this here. So let's start an agent in this environment. And you can see now this agent is running, and the agent is polling on the evaluate queue. There's currently no job running because no job has been sent to this queue. So before we set up an automation, I think it's often a good idea to test our job. So let's go back to our jobs, and let's go back to, I think, our tiny LabR workspace. Let's go back to the jobs. We have the eval job, and we can now launch this job. And we will select the evaluate queue. That is a Docker queue that we just created. You can see we could also use the Kubernetes cluster that we have available in our organization. But again, let's keep things simple first. We don't need Kubernetes to run this evaluation script. We can adjust the job priority. We can change the queue configurations here. We can change the destination project. I think all of the settings are fine. So let's launch this job now. Let's check our terminal, and you can see now the agent has picked up the job from the queue, and it's running the evaluation script. And it does not have an artifact with the name candidate. Okay, that reminds me that actually before we run the evaluation script, we need to move the model, our model that we just trained, to the model registry and give it this the candidate tag, because that's what our launch job expects to see. So let's go back to our project. Let me go back to the project in Weights and Biases. I can check the most recent runs, and specifically I'm interested in, this you can see the evaluation job that just failed because it didn't have access to the candidate model. I may want to just focus on the training runs. So let me add a filter, and job type. The job type should be train. And you can see 1 hour ago, experiment that finished. This is the job that we triggered together. You can see the training metrics here. Let's look at the training loss. Yeah, the training loss is just logged in a single step. So that's because we didn't run this model for very long. But we can also see like the evaluation here. And if we go into artifacts, we should see a model artifact. And I think it's time to add this model to our registry. So let's add it to our small instruct LLM. And because this is like this small $1 billion parameter model that we are fine-tuning on instructions. And let's give it the candidate alias. And let's link it to the registry. Okay. You can take a look at the model in the registry. And we can see the model that we added with the candidate alias. We can also see, is there a baseline? Yeah, there is already a model. The first model that we trained in this model registry, added in this model registry, has the baseline alias. So I think this is a good time now to launch this automation again, and hopefully this time everything will work fine. So let's go back to the project and the jobs. And let me try to launch this again. You can see, by the way, now since this is the second time we're running this job, we can clone the settings from the most recent run. We had some default settings that now visible here, and we can adjust some of the settings. But let's just keep it like this for now. Let's not make any changes here. Again, we'll pick our evaluate Docker queue, keep the medium priority, and we'll launch this job now. And if we go back to our console, hopefully the agent will pick this up now, and it's running the job. and we can see the candidate preference score, which is 0.04, which means there is a tiny bit of improvement, but it's really very similar to the baseline. And the evaluation is logged into Weights and Biases. So we just triggered the launch job from Weights and Biases, but this has been done manually. And in the next lesson, we'll do the same thing. We'll trigger our evaluation script, but we'll do it through model registry automations.